Hello and welcome to today's book summary. Today, I'll be sharing insights from the book The Sports Gene. When discussing the success of top performers, especially in the field of sports, many people attribute the achievements of elite athletes who dominate major competitions to two main factors: enviable natural talent and relentless, rigorous training. Indeed, in the sports world, or in any field for that matter, achieving great success largely depends on both effort and innate talent. Neither can be neglected. This is the answer most of us would come up with. However, after reading this book, I strongly feel that the equation effort-talent equal to success is overly simplistic and vague. There are many more nuanced questions that we may have never considered. For instance, across different fields and various competitive events, is the importance of effort and talent always a simple 50-50 split? We all know that effort is crucial, and many have heard of the famous 10,000-hour rule, which suggests that in any field, maintaining deliberate practice for an extended period will likely lead to mastery. But does this rule apply equally to everyone? Furthermore, how can we determine if someone has talent? Can modern scientific methods clearly quantify the vague concept of talent? The Sports Gene addresses these questions. This book helps us clearly see, at least in the realm of sports, the true relationship between talent and effort. The author of this book is David Epstein, a renowned American writer and a famous reporter for Sports Illustrated. He has long focused on researching sports and exercise science issues. I will interpret this book for you in two parts. In the first part, we'll discuss effort. We'll focus on answering one question: how much do the well-known concepts of the 10,000-hour rule and deliberate practice actually help top athletes? In the second part, we'll talk about talent. From the perspective of modern genetics and sports science research, how should we understand talent? To what extent can talent be clearly quantified? Let's start with the first part. How much impact does effort-intense training actually have on an athlete's success? We're all familiar with the 10,000-hour rule, which roughly states, those we perceive as geniuses are exceptional not because of inherently superior abilities, but due to consistent effort. 10,000 hours of practice is the necessary condition for anyone to transform from ordinary to world-class mastery. Looking across the sports world, this seems to hold true. Regardless of their discipline or innate talent, athletes who achieve significant success typically endure extensive training hours and intense workloads. We don't need to list examples of how hard top athletes train. To better understand the role of 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, let's shift our perspective and focus on the scientific research in this area. In the 1940s, a psychologist named de Groot, who was also a Dutch chess master, became particularly interested in a question during his chess playing and research. What allows master-level chess players to defeat average professionals? And why can average professionals easily outmaneuver amateurs? Conventionally, we assume that stronger players win because they can think further ahead than average players, the common notion of thinking 3 moves ahead. However, this isn't the case. When de Groot asked master-level players and average professionals to describe their match experiences, he found no significant difference in the number of moves or strategies they considered when making decisions. So the question remained, why do master-level players consistently make better decisions? After repeated experiments, de Groot discovered that the disparity between players of different levels lay in their ability to reconstruct chess positions. He showed players a photograph of a chess position for a few seconds, then quickly removed it and asked them to recreate the position on an empty board. The results showed that grandmasters could accurately reconstruct the position after just 3 seconds of observation. Average professionals could recreate about 70%, while amateurs could only manage about 50%. Moreover, grandmasters could understand the position in 5 seconds better than amateurs could after 15 minutes of study. This research conclusion effectively demonstrates that experience is the foundation for master-level players to achieve excellence. Later, scientists conducted more detailed studies based on this conclusion. They found that excellent athletes, compared to amateurs, possess stronger chunking memory, This means that athletes who have undergone extensive professional training unconsciously break down information they see into meaningful chunks based on their experience, rather than grasping numerous independent fragments. Top performers seem to have a mental database in their minds. In chess, for example, a master-level player's mental database contains millions of chess positions composed of at least 300,000 meaningful chunks. Whenever they see a new chess position, they automatically search their minds for chunk information that can solve the position. In contrast, amateurs with limited practice time often find themselves overwhelmed by fragmented new information. Other scientists, by tracking eye movements of people in different industries, discovered that whether they're excellent chess players, pianists, or surgeons, top performers can filter information more quickly than ordinary people. They can swiftly shift their attention away from irrelevant information and focus directly on the most crucial information for decision-making. This is particularly true in sports, where this perceptual ability, gained through extensive experience, allows one to extract important information from the situation on the field or subtle changes in an opponent's body movement, making unconscious predictions about what's about to happen. In general, these studies effectively prove that experience gained through rigorous training helps us build an information database in our minds for a particular field. We can even retrieve information chunks from our brains unconsciously to address new problems. Practice allows us to achieve a level of automation in solving certain problems, freeing up mental space to tackle more complex issues. This is one of the important factors in the success of top performers. At this point, you might think that in any field, practice and accumulation seem to be the real magic behind talent. Hard training is a necessary and sufficient condition for becoming an expert. The conclusion that hard training is important is undoubtedly correct. However, reaching this conclusion alone is far from enough. Have you ever wondered what kind of hard work actually leads to success? In other words, to become a top performer in an industry, how much training time and volume is actually needed? You might say that the 10,000-hour rule is a good standard. On the contrary, this book tells us that the 10,000-hour time frame may not be a scientific answer for measuring whether someone can become an expert. Let's look at an example from the book. Stefan Holm is a Swedish high jumper. At the 2004 Athens Olympics, he won the gold medal with a jump of 2.3 meters. Just a year later, he cleared a height of 2.4 meters, setting a record for the greatest difference between jump height and the athlete's own height. From then on, Holm was known as the best human spring. When scientists examined Holm's athletic characteristics, they found that his left Achilles tendon had become extraordinarily hard due to training, 4 times the hardness of an average person's tendon. This means that Holm's Achilles tendon acted like a powerful spring mechanism. Once given enough pressure, the rebound force could propel him quickly into the air, reaching heights unattainable by ordinary people. So how did Holm achieve this level in high jumping? From the age of 6, his father prepared a homemade jumping pit in their backyard for him and his friends to play. For over 20 years of his life, high jumping occupied almost all of his energy. He constantly repeated high-intensity strength training, received the most formal training after joining the national team, and continuously thought about improving his sprint and takeoff posture. Holm himself admitted that he might be the person who has jumped the most times on Earth. Later, in an interview, he said, "When I was young, I was often beaten by other high jumpers, and almost no one thought I could become an Olympic champion. My eventual success was almost entirely due to 10,000 hours or even more of effort." Hearing this, you might think that Holm's success perfectly confirms the 10,000-hour rule. Skills that seem to stem from talent are usually the result of thousands of hours of practice. However, some athletes have achieved extraordinary success with far less than 10,000 hours of training, sometimes not even half that amount. Take Donald Thomas, for example. Donald Thomas is a high jumper from the Bahamas. Unlike Holm, Thomas was relatively old when he first encountered high jumping. He had no foundation in the sport. According to his track and field coach at the time, when Thomas first started high jumping, he didn't even know that the track was circular. This person with absolutely no training experience cleared a height of over 2.21 meters in his first few attempts. After just 8 months of high jump training, Thomas competed in the 2007 World Athletics Championships. He progressed through the competition, eventually defeating the favorite to win the best human spring home, whom we mentioned earlier. Professional commentators said that if Thomas could receive systematic training, even if he only learned the professional motion of arching his back, he could easily surpass various world records. You see, while Holm took 20 years to become a world champion, Thomas did it in just 8 months. What some people achieve through a lifetime of effort, others seem to accomplish effortlessly. From this perspective, thousands of hours of rigorous training may not seem as crucial in the face of powerful innate talent. For most of us with average abilities, this is undoubtedly a discouraging result. Of course, the successes of Holm and Thomas are extreme examples. One dedicated his entire life to effort and eventually became a champion, while the other seemed to achieve success almost effortlessly, as if born for high jumping. For the vast majority of people, the situation lies somewhere between these two extremes. We may not have such powerful talents, nor can we dedicate decades of our lives to a single pursuit with 100% of our time. So, in most cases, does the 10,000-hour rule really work? Scientists, after extensive data analysis, have found that different sports require different average training times to reach a professional level. For example, in basketball, field hockey, and wrestling, the average training time for athletes to reach industry standards is 4,000 hours, and 6,000 hours, respectively. The required training time varies even more for different individuals. Some people can reach Olympic competition standards with just a few hundred hours of training, while others might need 20,000 hours or even longer. The author mentions in the book that a more accurate description than the 10,000-hour rule should be the 7,000 to 40,000-hour rule. Based on current scientific research, practice time within this range is sufficient for most people to master a skill. However, the gap between 7,000 hours and 40,000 hours is substantial. Calculating at 8 hours of training per day, without holidays or breaks, that's a difference of 10 years. The main reason for such a large discrepancy is our innate talent. To some extent, talent can indeed lead to a butterfly effect in learning professional skills. If there are even slight differences in the initial conditions between two practitioners, the results of practice can vary considerably as time accumulates. Therefore, the content of the first part tells us, deliberate practice is indeed very important. However, the 10,000-hour rule may not apply to everyone equally. If you find your area of aptitude and combine it with long-term deliberate practice, you will certainly achieve twice the result with half the effort. Conversely, if you persistently work hard in a field where you have no talent, you might become a competent practitioner or even an expert. But you need to know that compared to those with natural advantages in this field, you will spend more time and energy, yet likely achieve less. This book doesn't provide direct answers on how to better discover one's talents and strengths. However, its discussion of talent might offer us some insights. Talent has always been a frequently mentioned yet vague topic for us. When we describe someone as talented in a certain area, we generally mean they can quickly learn professional skills in that field and perform well. This is our subjective perception. But if we think a step further, can this subjectively perceived talent be quantified? In other words, can we determine if someone truly has talent by observing certain fixed characteristics or data? This book tells us that, at least in the field of sports research, scientists are already doing this. The key to helping scientists unlock the black box of talent is genetic research in modern genetics and sports science. In the sports field, we can understand so-called talent from two aspects. One is our external physical condition, such as height, arm span, and weight. The other is our internal body systems, such as whether your blood contains certain components or whether you have certain special genes. Let's discuss these one by one. Let's first look at external physical conditions. As early as the 19th century, people were studying the relationship between body and sports. However, limited by the scientific level and ideological concepts of the time, many believed that the perfect body proportion, or the best athlete's physique, must be a medium build, neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. Even in 1925, records showed that world-class volleyball players, discus throwers, high jumpers, and shot putters had almost identical physiques. Today, this view is obviously outdated. On the contrary, athletes in different fields have very different physical characteristics. Some researchers have proposed a theory called body type Big Bang. This theory mainly states that the advantageous body type in one sport will show completely different characteristics from advantageous body types in other events. For example, compared to the average human height, athletes excelling in long-distance running are becoming shorter and smaller. But those engaged in volleyball, rowing, and American football are becoming taller and more robust. You've probably noticed these phenomena, but what's worth noting is that the scientists who proposed the body type Big Bang theory developed an algorithm. Based on a large amount of collected data, this algorithm can calculate the degree of match between an ordinary person's body type and a specific sport, and to what extent they could become an elite athlete in this field. We won't go into the details of the algorithm design process. Let's look directly at the results. They found that today, only about 28% of men worldwide have a height-weight combination that meets the standards of professional soccer players, 23% meet the standards of sprinters, and 9.5% meet the standards of English rugby forwards. From this perspective, even in terms of external physical conditions alone, people with the talent of top athletes are still a minority. This is the limitation of innate physique. To elevate athletic performance to unprecedented heights requires not only special training, but also a special physique that can meet the training requirements. After discussing external physical conditions, let's look at internal systems. Whether there are any genes that determine that you were born with superior athletic talent compared to others. Let's talk about a typical example. We all know that athletes from Jamaica are particularly good at sprinting. For instance, Usain Bolt, known as the Lightning Bolt, has set multiple world records in sprinting. His running style is light and swift, seemingly effortlessly leading the second-place runner by about a body length. In competitions, he can even slow down near the finish line, look back at his opponents, and then effortlessly cross the finish line first. When faced with such an opponent, no matter how hard you try, you might only end up playing a supporting role. Of course, besides Bolt, the Jamaican track and field team members are among the world's top sprinters. So, what factors have led to these Jamaican athletes having such strong explosive power and lightning speed? Through research, scientists have discovered that in the blood of these top athletes, there is a large number of sickle cells. Sickle cells refer to red blood cells in the blood that were originally round but have become sickle-shaped due to lack of oxygen. This gene variant is most common in people with ancestors from West and Central Africa. During intense exercise, sickle cells cause less blood flow throughout the body compared to average people. During an all-out sprint, they can consume less oxygen to produce energy. This means that if you have these sickle cells in your body, to a large extent, you possess a kind of sprinting gene, making you more likely to gain powerful muscle explosiveness and reaction speed. However, having this gene isn't necessarily a good thing. While carriers of sickle cells are more likely to gain powerful explosiveness and speed, they have a huge disadvantage in endurance and are very unsuitable for long-distance sports. Researchers have found that in running events of 800 meters or more, sickle cell carriers are rarely seen. More seriously, excessive exercise can lead to insufficient blood supply throughout the body, with the possibility of death. Since 2009, American college football players have died suddenly during training, and investigations revealed that they all had these sickle cells in their blood. How did this sprinting gene brought by sickle cells appear? It turns out that the prevalence of sickle cells in African regions is due to the frequent occurrence of malaria there. And these sickle cells are a special gene gradually evolved by local people to combat malaria. When a person is infected with the malaria parasite, these sickle-shaped red blood cells can effectively protect the host, preventing devastating impacts. Sickle cells are just a typical example. Besides this, important athletic abilities like endurance and muscle strength can also find their roots in genetic inheritance. Modern genetics and sports science show us that what we usually call athletic talent was, to a large extent, not initially designed for better athletic performance, but merely for survival. We can say that athletic talent is a product of both environment and genetics. Conclusion. Here I have concluded the book, The Sports Gene, for you. In the field of sports, both effort and talent are important factors for top performers to achieve success. Neither can be dispensed with. Through more in-depth scientific research, we can see that experience accumulated through practice can certainly make a person proficient in a field, or even an expert. However, to become a top performer, in addition to effort, you must also consider whether you are suitable, that is, whether you have talent in this aspect. Through research in modern genetics and sports science, the vague and subjective concept of talent is gradually being clearly quantified. By judging a person's genetic composition and body proportions, we can largely determine whether they are suitable for a certain sport. This kind of talent, determined by genes, is often initially a product evolved to adapt to specific survival environments. Congratulations! You've digested another book.